In a small town, you know everyone. You have a name rather than a number. You're known by your first name. You can tell by the tone of the voice as to how you are known by that name.
There's a main street, a general store, even a dentist here named Mayberry. It's a piece of Americana past, dragging its feet into the present so as not to lose its identity. But let's face it, folks, as much could be said of 1,000 quaint villages happily bypassed by the interstate and content with a slower pace. But tucked away in the foothills and the apple orchards of the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia, the natives of this one-stop sign town have a unique claim to fame. Amid all the places that share the name, you see, this was the very first Washington, surveyed by George himself in 1749.
It grew up around a stagecoach intersection. In 1800, it was probably busier than it is now, as there were about 4 taverns and ordinaries.
Fran Eldred's home was one of those inns. Dating back to the mid-1700s, town history tells us George Washington danced in what is now her dining room. Fran has lived in the same house since birth. Today, she is the town magistrate and owns a lighting restoration shop adjacent to her home that was once called, as you might have guessed, the Washington House.
I am probably one of the few shop owners in this town that is a native. It has taken new blood in this town to revive it. Most of the shops and businesses are owned by people from out of the area who have come in and fallen in love, really, with the area.
Nationally known cabinet maker Peter Kramer is one of those newcomers. Newcomer here is anyone who hasn't lived in the town for 3 generations. Originally from Manhattan, the population of his apartment house was slightly larger than that of this community, nicknamed Little Washington, with its 210 souls. Since moving here in 1971, Kramer has purchased and restored several of the town's 19th century homes. This past spring, he was elected mayor for a second time.
My acceptance here is depends on who you talk to. There are people who love the fact that I came here and that I have purchased the buildings that were in need of work and have worked on them. And there are those who wish that I would leave it alone because they're afraid that, you know, somewhere along the line it's going to take off and we're going to lose control over it.
Many residents fear that Little Washington will grow into a big Washington. Not just the natives, but newcomers want to hold on to the image of a sleepy mountain town.
Many of these people feel that this town was Sinclair Lewis's Main Street. It wasn't. This was not a colonial town of palatial manners, formal English gardens. Many of these places were not painted, or if they were painted, the paint was whitewash, which had to be renewed every year, and many times did not get renewed every year.
Rural as it may be, Washington, Virginia is known by the New York Times, Esquire magazine, and many other national publications, not for its history, but for its 5-star gourmet restaurant. 7 years ago, this was the beginning of a fantasy come true for owner-chef Patrick O'Connell. Inspired by the country inns of France, he created the Inn at Little Washington. But this newcomer's enthusiasm was the town's skepticism.
There were some great first lines that came out of our original plan and first months of trying to build this thing. And one always was, well, who's coming? And another was, where's the TV? Where's the salad bar?
Despite its distance from any major city, the inn has become a success. O'Connell and partner Reinhard Lynch have established themselves as part of the community, using local recipes, hiring staff from the surrounding county, and bartering with townspeople for herbs, vegetables, and flowers grown in their gardens, breads made in their kitchens.
Hey, Pat!
Yes. Madame Andrea.
Here's your flowers.
I never think of it as a restaurant, and it never feels like running a restaurant to me, and the staff responds accordingly. We feel very much like a large family who is entertaining.
Great.
And that's nice. That's how I want it to be.
But the neighbors see the inn as something special. You've heard the old line about entertainment in a small town. They watch the paint dry. Well, here, they watch the dinner guests arrive.
For 200 years, you never saw a limousine in this town. There were people who had never seen a limousine, period. And suddenly, they have become as common on a weekend as the local station wagon. And so it's always a curiosity as to who is getting out and who is going to the inn. And at first, the curiosity was such that people would drive up and park on the corner to watch and see who got out.
I suppose so, yeah.
Visitor watching may be the Saturday night entertainment, but the folks here always remember that it wasn't a fancy restaurant that put Little Washington on the map. A surveyor named George did that 35 years ago. Famous inn or no, the small-town character of the place hasn't really changed since then.
And I know that a lot of people from the city and the press and so forth like to come out and try to find out what it is that makes the little town click. And basically, I think that there is a spirit in the community, and it's really a nice place to be.